Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. I'm gonna give everybody a second to get on here. I'm Melisa Nielsen with Waldorf Essentials, and I wanna thank you for joining us for a Monday morning video. So let's see, so much is going on here. First, our video today is brought to you by our sale that we're having. So we're having a kindergarten sale, flash sale, that actually ends today at midnight Pacific time. So, or Eastern time. I can't remember, but it ends at midnight. I can't remember if it's Pacific time or Eastern time. Anyways, it ends at midnight. So it's a flash sale, and so it's gonna be gone in a flash. And we are super excited because it's a really great way if you're trying to sort out, like, should I jump on the Waldorf Essentials bandwagon and you've got younger children, this is a perfect opportunity for you to check us out. So it's our kindergarten curriculum that is usually $175 and it's on sale for $45. So if you are on Instagram, you can grab that link in our profile with our links. And if you are on Facebook, Eric could just pop it in the comments. It's waldorfessentials.com/kindergarten. And if you have any questions, please drop me a DM or a PM and I'm happy to answer those for you. Okay, our topic today. Our topic today is how to help your kids make friends. So it's a hot topic for homeschoolers. So I'm gonna unravel it because there's a few, not just a couple, because that implies there's only two. There's a few different things to sort of keep in mind when it comes to your kids making friends. So we've got neurotypical children and children with spectrum issues and the big, like, homeschoolers are unsocialized situation, all of that. So I'd like to sort of touch a little bit on everything. Let's start with the most important thing, though, I think, is you. And this is why I think you're the most important thing. If we have poop that we are carrying with us from our childhood, whether it be we were star athlete and everybody loved us and we were the most popular cheerleader in school, or we were the nerd that everybody picked on, both of those and everything in between is going to, all of that's going to sort of affect how you show up as this homeschooling parent who's looking to help your children socialize. Why is that going to affect it? Well, because you're going to expect that your socialization or your expectation or situation as a child is going to be theirs, or you're going to be working for it to not be theirs because maybe you had a bad experience. So before you can enter this arena and discuss this or even think about this situation, you have to let go of your own poop and garbage. Like, seriously. You have to decide, my child is not me. My experience is not going to be my child's experience. It might be, but likely it won't be. So you've got to sort of find ways to let go of that for yourself. Like I said, whether it be it was really great and amazing, or whether it be that it was horrible. And I actually had a little bit of both. It's kind of funny. Most people, unless you were like the star or always cast down, most people that were in the middle were kind of like me. You kind of had some years that you were like great and everybody loved you, and you had some years where you're like, I don't know why nobody will talk to me. and that has like there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe you moved a lot as a child. I was an Army brat, so I moved a lot in my elementary years, but I stayed put in my high school years. And so there are a lot of things that sort of go into how you had those experiences as a kid. And I think that when you're thinking about those experiences, it's really important to not play the blame game for your parents. It's really important for you to just go, okay, but as a grown-up, I can have these different feelings and I can make these different choices. And in making those choices, it's going to inform how I help my child make their choices. So when you've got young children, really young children, like 3 and under, really just go to the park, have play dates with friends, have a really good rhythm, but be social yourself. And now I'm going to say this, and some of you are not going to believe me, but I am actually an introvert. I would much rather just chill out and knit in peace. I don't have to knit with a bunch of friends. I don't have to go on girls' night out. I don't have to do any of those things to fill my bucket. None of them. The biggest thing to fill my bucket is to spend time with my husband and time with my family. Those are the biggest things to fill my bucket. Those things, though, will not progress my children socially and teach them in social settings how to sort of act around people. They know how to act around each other, which is sometimes kind of nutty. You ever seen my children in public? Probably not. Sometimes I go, really? Like, if you ever catch my children and my husband in an elevator somewhere and they don't know you're watching, they're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff, aren't you, dear?
Yep.
So, like, I often wonder what the people that are like, because most elevators have some security camera. I often wonder what the people in the security are like. Who are these people? Anyway, so we have to sort of make situations for them to be able to interact. And in doing that, we have to be able to step out of, or be willing to step out of our comfort zone sometimes. So if your comfort zone is like mine, like you'd rather just knit alone and you'd rather just work with your children and your partner, then I'm going to say you've got to step out. If you are always social and you want to be with everybody, and this is so much temperament, you want to be with everybody and you want to be the life of the party, then you're probably going to have to rein some stuff back in, because often what happens as we become grown-ups and our children's temperaments start to sort of flourish and we start to see what's going on is often they're opposite than we are. And it's really strange sometimes when you're the parent that has to be like, oh, this child really needs me to go out and make friends with people. So you have to be willing to do that. As a homeschooling parent, we have to be more conscious about what it is that, or who it is that our children are around. Because, hey, that's why part of the reason why we homeschooled, right? Like, we wanted to be able to pick. But we didn't homeschool to sort of keep them locked up in the house all day. At least I hope that's not why you homeschooled. So you're going to need to step out of your comfort zone. And that might be, like I said, just a play group when they're younger. And maybe that play group turns into something more like a co-op if you're in a play group with other homeschooling parents or parents that are wanting to homeschool. So you want to be sure that you have these sort of social interactions. I think as they're getting older, school age, kindergarten and above, they're going to ask you, Mommy, when can I go play with friends? Like Soraya would ask to go play with people every day, all day. Does that mean it's good for her? Absolutely not. We have to sort of temper that one too, is this desire to be with people and not know how to calm is how we create imbalance. So we have to sort of teach them that, hey, we do this breathing out where we go see friends, and breathing in where we're home, and breathing out and breathing in. And it's really healthy if you do this breathing out and breathing in throughout your week, so that it supports your rhythm, it supports what you've got going on at home, it supports your child's development, all of those pieces. So I would say when they're, like 4 and under, 3 or 4 and under, you're going to 1 play date a week, maybe 2 at the most. At the most. You're not at a play date every day. You're not sort of running here and there every day. What I would highly suggest is that you have some down days and some home days. Now, Mom, if that's really hard for you, you've got to figure out why that's hard for you. There are things that you probably need to work through within your own inner work as to why you feel like you have to be running all the time. What are you running away from? Which I know is like the hated question when somebody says to me, my rhythm's all crazy and I just can't figure it out. And I go, why is rhythm not safe for you? And then they stop and they think and they don't want to answer that question. So if that's a question you would ask me, like, why can't you get your rhythm sorted? I'm going to ask you, why is rhythm not safe for you? So that's like a trip down memory lane, right? A trip into your childhood, a trip into where in there do you need to heal so that you can realize the amazing pieces of rhythm. And realize not as in here, but in your heart, and that comes from that study and doing. So then, as they're getting older, I would say grade school age again, like maybe kindergarten to probably about age 9, they still really only need like 1 to 2 extra interactions a week. Now, when I say 1 to 2, like for our family, and that does, I'm not including outside activities just yet. So give me just 1 second. But for our family, I've always sort of found this balance in like a co-op day once a week. And then our kids have church once a week. And so then we also have a church activity in the middle of the week. Plenty of extra activities. That's plenty of opportunities for them to go and really connect with other children that are their age. And one thing that I think is very beautiful when they connect in, say, a co-op setting or a setting where there's varied ages is that they're not just connecting with their peer group, they're connecting with others as well, which will allow them to then seamlessly sort of weave in and out and be able to understand, if they're maybe 12, they understand the plight of a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. They might not want to hang out with them all the time, but they understand, hey, they're not where I am. I can sit and read to them and enjoy that. And they can do some funny things sometimes, because sometimes 5-year-olds are like little drunk people, and they're really funny to watch. But like what they're getting is that they're understanding that they can, hang out with the younger ones. And what the 5-year-old's getting out of that is, hey, this 12-year-old doesn't think I'm horrible. Like other 12-year-olds might act like they don't want to have anything to do with me. So we're sort of giving our children that space to interact with all age groups, but then also giving them an opportunity to interact with their own peer group. Because I think that too is very important. It's very important for them to be able to test out some of those things that happen within their peer group in a very safe setting. So sometimes that setting might be at church, if you belong to a church situation, or congregation. That was the right word, sorry. Or it might be in a co-op setting. So in a co-op setting, often you have many children of many different ages, but you also want to make sure that they have a peer group. I think that really seeing how others are doing that are their age is really important. And I think having a peer group that is also homeschooled is extra important, because there are, like, most children will not think anything about being homeschooled until they're probably 10 or 11 years old. And then they're going to be like, oh, there are lots of people that don't do what we do. Before that, they are not so much thinking about that. And they're really more, it's very still family centered, and they might just be thinking about their smaller community. But after that, then they're starting to realize that the world as a whole, while there are a lot of homeschoolers today, there are not as many as there are kids that go to a public school or a private school situation, which is just fine. I mean, we tell our kids, some people choose that, some people choose this. This is what we choose for our family. And so then you might, especially around the 9-year-old, have to start thinking about, well, why did you choose this for your family? Eric and I have always been really open about this is what we really spiritually felt like we were supposed to do for our family. Way before we owned Waldorf Essentials, I started this journey, bless you, dear. I started this journey forever ago, like way before Eric came on board. And I really felt like, and it's interesting because at the time I was not religious at all. I was very much in a spiritual place, trying to find myself. And I really felt God, source, whatever noun you want to put on that, say these children need to be at home. So for whatever reason. So that very much always drove me. And I always went back and said, do they still need to be at home? Yes, they do. They still need to be at home. So for whatever reason, they have always needed to be in this space. And we flourished in this space, but I've had to work to make sure that they flourished in the space as well. So my kids also go to karate 3 times a week right now. And I think that having one outside activity other than a church activity is enough. So for all of you that have got kids in baseball and soccer and all 14 things, breathe, because there's no way you can do all of that and still feel sane and still get lessons done and not feel like you're running around crazy. So you want to not feel like you have that like crazy frantic energy around you. And the only way to do that is to really sort of own your rhythm and own the time that you're spending with your kids and the time that they're spending in these other activities. Do I think that, because I get this one a lot, do I think that outside activities like, say, a karate class is enough social time? No, I don't. Especially as they get older. As they get older, they really need to have some more opportunities to really talk to their peer group, hang out with them. And for us, our co-op really provides that, even though they're not just hanging out for 4 hours, they're in classes during that time, but they're with their peer group in those classes, and that's super helpful. So definitely sort of seek out those situations. If you are, say, very rural and you're choosing to homeschool in a very rural setting, I know lots of families that do that, then you have to work even harder. And I would not turn to online interaction at any of these preteen to teenage years, just because that's not where we want them to get that space. We want them to be face-to-face with people. So you're going to have to work harder. If you are in a rural setting, you're going to have to drive your 20, 30, 40 miles to go to the library teen group once a week or whatever that is, so that you can really help those children make those connections. You really have to be able to help them understand their peer group and really do it in a way that nourishes and supports them. And sometimes it puts us out, but we're the parent and we have to sort of push that along. Okay, I have a comment over here. I know parents who prefer many activities. I am not in this group. Their kids are most of the time tired and sad because they have too many responsibilities. Yes, and I think it is thank you for that comment. And she says she's from Poland. Kisses back to you from Poland, from the United States. Thank you. I caught your kisses. I think that often as homeschoolers, we think that we need to have 14,000 activities so that we can sort of measure up to what they're missing. And that is flawed thinking. The reason we homeschool is not to replace the school. It is to do something better than the school, something different from the school, to offer our children more than what they have in that building down the street. So you have to remind yourself when you're signing them up for 6 activities, hey, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for when I started homeschool. And if your kids are like, but Mom, I really want to do ceramics and soccer and baseball, you have to say, you know what, life is about picking. Life is about picking, because when we do one thing, it is always at the expense of something else. That's not bad. It's not a bad thing. It just is. So we have to sort of sort out what is that number one thing that we want to do. And maybe you have a number 1 and a number 2, but that is it. You cannot be running crazy. I've also told my children that bonus points, if you can get yourself there and back without me. If there is like some carpool system that I'm happy to be helpful in, but that carpool system has to be in place. So you want to do that activity, especially when they're 12 and up. I go, how is it that you think you're going to get there? Let's talk about that. When they're probably 14 and up, if you have good public transportation in your town, you could say, all right, so how are you going to get there? Are you going to ride the bus or the train? You're going to, have this extra family cell phone so that they have it with them so that you don't have to worry about them. All those things. You want to make sure that you give them that piece of freedom, but you also want to make sure that you're not driving everywhere. You really want to work with that. Years and years ago, I taught a class on sort of having a peaceful family home rhythm at one of the conferences that Rahima Baldwin used to do, and it was in Boulder. There was this parent who came in and sat down. He already looked kind of annoyed, and he's like, I'm just here to find out how to not be in my car so much. And I said, stop doing everything that you're doing. Just pare down. And he kind of laughed. That was not the answer he wanted. He wanted me to tell him some magic way for him to not have to do everything that he's doing. I'm like, yeah, say no. He didn't like that. So, and oftentimes we're not ready to hear that answer. We're not ready to hear it's okay to say no. It's okay to just not be in everything, because that does not further our cause as humans. It does not further what it is that we're, that ideal that we're looking for within ourselves. So as they get older, they're going to want more social. And again, I just usually say to them, okay, let's talk about how you're going to get there, because mom has this to do, especially hard when you have bigger kids and little kids. So when you've got, little kids that need you at home in the evening, then you're either going to have to split driving time with dad or find out how you're getting there. And often, if you can talk to other parents, especially other parents that are near you, and just say, hey, do you mind dropping Johnny off when you're done? I'll take him to the event, but I've got these little ones at home. And say it. I have these little ones at home that really need to get into bed, and I really don't want them up so late. Do you mind dropping Johnny off? Most parents can be like, yeah, sure, of course, I've got to be out. I have to drive, near your street anyways. I'm happy to drop Johnny off. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to step out and talk to other parents, even if they're not homeschooling parents. We go through this at church all the time. I'll say, Sam, is there a way you're getting home? And sometimes there is, and sometimes there's not. But that's when Dad and I have to split things, and he might take him and I might pick him up, or vice versa. So you really want to have a good conversation with Dad about these things. Often it's Dad that's worrying about socialization and schooling. So I would absolutely put Dad on the spot and say, okay, there's these evening activities and you were so worried about social. So guess what? You get to help me with the driving, because I think it needs to be a family affair. It's not just all on mom all the time, because it's too exhausting. Of course, once they're like 16, 17 and older, you could employ Uber to help you, something like that. Although Eric will probably tell you that as a former Uber driver, he does not like it when parents do that.
And you're not supposed to do that.
Because they're supposed to be 18 to take an Uber, right? So it's more stressful for the Uber driver if you allow your 14, 13, 15-year-old to go alone in the car. Okay. Over here I think the whole problem of doing too much comes from the general thought that there's a much better life somewhere up there. So not true. You should enjoy the moment. Absolutely. I do think that we fall into, and it's so interesting because you're from Poland that you're saying this, as I'm often wondering, is this a problem in the United States only? I don't think so. I think the whole world thinks that they have to do something more all the time instead of just settle down into the present moment. Enjoy the flowers, enjoy the snow, enjoy, what's going on around you, enjoy everything that you have right in front of you. And if there's nothing right in front of you to enjoy, then spend 5 minutes and think about what it is that you're thankful for, and then go and make a family decision that you're going to move somewhere else eventually, so that you don't have to be in a place where you don't enjoy it. You have so many choices in life. And by having so many choices, that doesn't mean you have to be doing something constantly. So I want to talk for a minute about special needs kids and sort of inclusion, exclusion, and sort of how that happens. So I've got 2 kids with some special needs going on. My oldest is on the autism spectrum. He was diagnosed with Asperger's when he was 9. And my youngest has no diagnosis, but there's something sensory, at the very least, it's a sensory processing disorder. And she is 8.5 and smart as a whip. And most people don't know that there's anything going on. So then I say to them, oh, why don't you just give her too much sugar and some screens for about 20 minutes, and then you'll see it's there. We do a lot of work to sort of keep her in a balanced place. And in doing that, we've had to talk to her about friends and how to have friends. And I was thinking back about when my older son was, because he's 22 now, when he was like 5, 6, 7. And those were his heaviest years of tantruming, heaviest years of really struggling. I think that if you have a child on the autism spectrum, these are the hardest years. The years under 12, and especially the years under 9, are the hardest years. After that, most children, I'm definitely not saying all children with autism for sure, because autism is this long spectrum. You've got kids over here, you've got kids over here, and a whole bunch in between. So I would say most high functioning autism or autism spectrum disorders By the time they're about 9, they are much better at controlling their tantruming. They're much better at controlling themselves. But I'm going to say this. They're not going to be if you do not hold their feet to the flame. So I actually had this conversation with my son the other day, and he's part of the, I did an interview with him, and that will air it's an unplugged interview that we did, and it will air, I think I have it airing the first part of November. And we're working on finishing putting it together. We talked very deeply about friends, and I asked him, like, what was the number one thing that helped you when you were in that space? And he said, you never let me get away with anything. That was his view. You never let me not apologize. You never let me not have to see my own ugly actions. You never let me sort of get away from that. Because I told him, you're going to have to work harder than other kids. And sometimes that's going to be really uncomfortable. And you're going to apologize. And it may not be in the moment, but if he's done something, whether it have been, he was never a biter, but I know that there are some kids on the autism spectrum that bite. He was never a biter, but he was definitely a hitter. He was definitely a like, I hate what you're doing. So he would like grab a Lego that somebody else was working on and throw it. He was definitely like a, scorched earth kind of child. And so while often it was too much, he was too overwhelmed to apologize in the moment, we would step back, regain composure, and then he would either write them a note or go to them specifically and apologize for what he did. Because until they connect the action of what's happened with why they're not having friends, they're not going to figure it out. You have to help them connect to that action. And so, if they've never done anything like that and they're just showing up and you're trying to help them sort of play, start with smaller groups, 2 kids, then 3 or 4. 4 is easier than 3. 4 is easier than 3 because 3 becomes often like 2 kids and 1 kid alone. So I would say when you're doing your grouping, you're trying to sort some things out, start with 2 kids and then maybe go to 4 kids. Just because it's very helpful to them when they've started in a smaller group to then go to a little bit of a bigger group before you do a giant group. So we did co-ops with Harry, that's my son's name, even when he was really young. But they were generally co-ops where there wasn't a whole lot of extra play. It was academic, and then we ate together kind of thing. Eating together, I think, is a great way to sort of get them in sideways if they're struggling to get in with their peer group. So, it may take you as mom walking up to a group of kids and saying, hey, can Johnny sit here with you and eat lunch with you guys? Most kids, when a mom says that, are not going to say no. Most of them will be like, sure. Even if they're not 100% sure that Johnny can be their friend, he absolutely can sit there and eat lunch with them. So it's about sort of not hovering. You want to sort of watch. And I think that that's a really important thing too. Remember, we talked about at the beginning of the episode about sort of getting rid of your poop from your own childhood and your own ideas about making friends. It is even more important when you have a child that's on the spectrum, because in your mind, if you are not on the spectrum, in your mind, you are expecting that Johnny will make friends the same way a neurotypical child does, and they won't. In fact, when I was talking to my son, I thought this was interesting because it actually supported some research that I had done. He said, sometimes, Mom, it was just easier to play by myself. He said, I had a rich thing going on in my head, and I didn't have to explain it to anybody, and I didn't have to do something their way. He said, because I said, wasn't that lonely? He said, sometimes, but usually not. And so I think that often we put this idea out there that it has to be exactly the same way it is for neurotypical people, and it doesn't. Did that mean that I didn't make him come with us for social interaction? No, I made him come with us. He came with us all the time. I had to help him get over the anxiety at being around people. I had to help him get over the anxiety of talking to other people. When he was about 11 or 12, I made him make 5 non-family contacts a day. I didn't care if that meant he went next door and asked the neighbor for sugar. Like, probably for a year, he asked her for sugar almost every day. Sometimes he took sugar back that we borrowed. But he had to make those non-family contacts. It was super important because they have this anxiety that builds, and it builds even more when they don't have to do something like that regularly. But when they do it regularly, then it's not anxiety producing anymore. It's easy. It's easy. And I've told this story before, like, I think he was about 13 years old, and we were in the movie theater, and all of us were sort of sitting there, and when I have 5 children, but we only had 4 at the time. We're all sitting down to watch a movie, and super excited that we could afford to go to the dollar theater. It's a long time ago. I'm looking at everybody, and of course it doesn't take very long for the popcorn to be empty when you have that many people. The popcorn's usually empty before the movie starts. So I hand it to Harry, who's sitting on the side of me, and I say, "Hey, go get more popcorn." And he looks at me and says, "But I've already made my 5 contacts for the day." And I said, "Get your butt up. Go get more popcorn." And it was this realization then that he had oh, I can make more than 5 contacts a day. And he was probably, like I said, 12 or 13 years old. So it's about really helping them in those social settings. When you can help them with that, then it will help them in their friends situations. It will help them sort of not rush in and try to take control of things, but you have to talk to them about it. There are some great, if you guys listen to Sparkle Stories, I would highly recommend them, sparklestories.com. There are some great ones in the sleepy time versions that are almost always sort of helping with behaviors. So there is a Sparkle story called Dustin the Sand Crab, where he is constantly trying to get people to play his game, and nobody will play his game. And his uncle's like, "Well, you got to enroll them." So sometimes you have to teach that child, you've got to enroll them. Enroll them in what you're doing. What does that mean? That means you say, "Hey, I have this great game," and that means you've thought it through. So I've had to have that conversation with my kids on the spectrum too. You can't just decide you're going to play this game where you're changing the rules every 3 seconds. Think it through, decide what the rules are, and then enroll them. Enroll these other kids and say, "Hey, I have this cool game." Now, you might have another kid that might be like, "Well, that game sounds cool, but what if we did this instead?" And then you have to be flexible enough to go, "Oh, well, that sounds interesting," instead of going, "No, we're playing it my way, and if you don't play it my way, I'm going to have a tantrum." So be upfront with your kids about it. Be upfront with how behavior affects children. And if your child has been in a situation where they've hit another child or bit another child or any of that, you have got to decide that you're going to help your child fix it. Because even if you think that child should get over it, guess what? The other child is going to always remember that your kid's a kid that bites, because they're young and they don't have the capacities for forgiveness that we do. But even adults, if they have been yelled at and screamed at by another adult, guess what? They're always going to be like, "That's the guy who yelled and screamed at me." So you want to really work with your child to make sure they fix things when they've broken a trust or broken a boundary. And you want to sort of help them scooch in with some ideas, but don't hover. Give them space. That's what they need. Okay. Hopefully I covered everything. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I hope you, if you're in the spot of helping your kids make friends and you've been struggling, I hope this has helped. And if not, drop us a message. I'm always happy to do follow-ups, and I'm happy to sort of work that into, whether it be me just talking to you and telling you, "Hey, try this," or working that into a follow-up. So please have a wonderful week. Wonderful, wonderful week. And again, if you're watching and you are thinking about how can I get in with Waldorf Essentials, and I just want to get a taste, try our early childhood and kindergarten curriculum. Is on sale right now for $45, which is highly crazy because I don't do that very often. I think this is only the 3rd time in a year that I've done it, and I'm not sure that we're going to do it again until next spring. So if you've been wanting it or thinking about it for your child, this is the time, because if I do it again, it will probably not be $45. Y'all realize that's $130 off, right? I don't know what I'm thinking, but I know there are a lot of people that are appreciating it and enjoying it. So come and join us if you like. Also, really quick, if you are in the Southern Hemisphere, I am starting Planning for Peace for the Southern Hemisphere this week. So I'll be sending out an email today to really talk about it. If you are not a member of Planning for Peace and you really want some planning help for the next school year, you probably need to sign up for Planning for Peace right away, or just become a Thinking, Feeling, Willing member and have all of it. If you are in the Southern Hemisphere and you really want our kindergarten, but you're like, I don't even know how to make these stories work down here because they're all seasonally based for the Northern Hemisphere, I'm writing some Southern Hemisphere stories. I'm just going to rearrange some things around. It's working up here. So I'm going to be working on that. So again, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere and you really want some planning help, Planning for Peace starts this week, and it will be twice a month, just like it is for the Northern Hemisphere when I run it in April to September. So we'll do twice a month, and I'll cover all the things that you need to cover, because I know that there are not as many resources for the Southern Hemisphere, and I'm working to change that. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you guys later.